Before we begin, if you're listening to this alone at night, you're exactly where you should be. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more true horror stories, disturbing encounters, and unexplained events uploaded every day. Now lock your doors, turn off the lights, and let's get into tonight's stories. I matched with her at 1:14 in the morning. By 1:15, she had already sent the first message. By 1:20, we were having one of the easiest conversations I'd ever had on a dating app. And by sunrise, I was convinced I'd finally met someone real, someone genuine, someone worth getting excited about. The problem was, her profile shouldn't have existed, and I didn't learn that until after I agreed to meet her. This happened in the spring of 2023. At the time, I lived outside Nashville, Tennessee. I was 28 years old, recently out of a long-term relationship, and like a lot of people, I decided to try dating apps again. I wasn't looking for anything serious, at least not initially. Mostly casual conversations, occasional dates, nothing unusual. After several months, the experience became predictable. Fake profiles, bot accounts, people who never replied, the usual frustrations. Then I matched with a woman named Emily, and immediately something felt different. Not suspicious, different. Her profile looked normal. A few photos, short bio, local area. Nothing stood out, yet the conversation flowed effortlessly. Almost too effortlessly. We shared similar interests, similar music tastes, similar hobbies. Everything seemed to line up. The compatibility felt almost unbelievable. Still, sometimes you get lucky. At least that's what I thought. The conversations continued for several days. Hours every evening, sometimes late into the night. The connection felt genuine. Then I noticed something strange. Every time I asked specific questions about her life, she avoided answering. Not obviously, not rudely, just subtly. Questions about work, questions about family, questions about friends. The details always remained vague. The realization bothered me. A little. Still, many people value privacy. Reasonable explanation. Then things became stranger. One evening, I mentioned a restaurant. A small local place. Not particularly famous. My stomach tightened when she immediately responded. Because she described the interior perfectly. The booths. The lighting. Even specific artwork hanging on the walls. The problem? The restaurant had closed almost 3 years earlier. My blood immediately ran cold. Because there was no reason she should have described it as though it still existed. The realization genuinely unsettled me. I asked whether she'd visited recently. The response took longer than usual, nearly 5 minutes. Then she simply replied, "Maybe I'm remembering wrong." The explanation felt weak, very weak. Still, I let it go. The conversations continued. Then another strange detail appeared, and this one bothered me much more. She seemed to know things about me. Things I hadn't mentioned. Specific things. The park where I ran every weekend. A bookstore I visited occasionally. Even the coffee shop near my office. The realization genuinely frightened me. Because none of that information appeared on my profile. None. I finally asked how she knew those places. The response came immediately. Too immediately. She claimed she was familiar with the area. Reasonable explanation. Except the answer didn't explain everything. Not even close. The feeling stayed with me, growing stronger every day. Still, I ignored it, because I liked her, because the conversations felt real, because I wanted the situation to make sense. Eventually we agreed to meet. Saturday evening. Public restaurant. Safe location. Normal first date. Simple. Or so I thought. The day of the date arrived. I showed up early, ordered a drink, waited. 30 minutes passed. No Emily. 45 minutes. Nothing. An hour. Still nothing. My messages remained unread. The realization immediately frustrated me, because it felt like I'd been ghosted. Simple as that. Annoying. But common. Eventually I left. Disappointed. Embarrassed. Ready to move on. Then my phone buzzed. A message. From Emily. The text contained only one sentence. "I saw you." My blood immediately ran cold. Because if she'd seen me, why hadn't she approached? The realization genuinely unsettled me. I asked where she was. No response. Minutes passed. Then another message arrived. You looked exactly like your photos. My stomach immediately dropped, because now the situation felt different. Very different. I asked again where she was. Again, no response. The conversation ended. Completely. The profile disappeared shortly afterward. Gone. Deleted. Vanished. The story should have ended there. Instead, things became worse. Several weeks later, I mentioned the experience to a friend. A friend who worked in digital security. Mostly joking. Mostly venting. The moment I showed him screenshots, his expression changed. Immediately. Because he recognized something. The profile photographs. Not the woman. The images themselves. The realization immediately made my stomach tighten. Because according to him, the photos came from multiple unrelated social media accounts. Different states. Different years. Different people. The profile was fabricated. Entirely fabricated. The discovery genuinely disturbed me. Because now the obvious question emerged. Who had I actually been talking to? The investigation became an obsession. I searched. Compared images. Reviewed conversations. Everything. Then I found something even worse. The account wasn't unique. Multiple people reported similar interactions. Same photographs. Same conversational style. Same behavior. The realization genuinely frightened me. Because whoever operated the account wasn't looking for dates. They were collecting information, learning routines, learning habits, learning schedules. And one detail still bothers me. Because among the messages I'd saved, one sentence stood out. A sentence I initially ignored. A sentence sent weeks before the scheduled date. It read, "I think I've seen you before." At the time, it sounded flirtatious, harmless, normal. Looking back, I'm not so sure, because by the end of the experience, I realized something unsettling. I never actually confirmed who Emily was, but somebody clearly knew who I was. The first location change seemed reasonable. The second was annoying. The third made me nervous. Because every time I arrived at the place we'd agreed to meet, my match would send another message. Another apology. Another excuse. Another location. And every new location was farther away than the last one. Farther from crowds. Farther from businesses. Farther from people. Eventually I stopped feeling like I was driving to a date. I started feeling like I was being led somewhere. This happened in the summer of 2022. At the time, I was living outside Phoenix, Arizona. I was 26 years old, recently single, and spending way too much time on dating apps. Most matches went nowhere. A few conversations, a few awkward dates, nothing memorable. Then I matched with a woman named Kayla. At least that's the name she used. Her profile looked legitimate. Multiple photos, detailed bio, normal conversation, nothing immediately suspicious. The first few days felt promising. She was funny, easy to talk to, quick to respond. Everything seemed genuine. Eventually we agreed to meet. Saturday evening. A busy restaurant near downtown. Public place. Safe environment. Simple. The day arrived. I got ready. Drove downtown. Parked. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Kayla. She apologized. Something had come up. Could we meet at a coffee shop instead? No problem. Things happen. I updated my route. Drove to the coffee shop. 20 minutes later, I arrived. Then another message appeared. Another apology. Another excuse. The coffee shop was crowded. Could we meet somewhere quieter? My stomach tightened slightly, because the timing felt strange. Still, reasonable explanation. At least initially. The new location sat farther outside town. A small park. Nothing isolated. Nothing alarming. I continued. Then another message arrived. My blood immediately ran cold. Because now she wanted to meet somewhere else entirely. A scenic overlook outside the city. The realization genuinely bothered me. 3 locations. 3 changes. 3 different explanations. Nothing about it felt normal anymore. I considered canceling. I probably should have. Instead, I kept going. Partly because I was already invested. Partly because I wanted answers. The farther I drove, the more uncomfortable I became. Traffic disappeared. Businesses disappeared. Streetlights became less frequent. The surroundings gradually felt isolated. Then I noticed something strange. Every new location came through text messages. Not the dating app. Not after we exchanged numbers. The realization immediately bothered me, because now there was no record, no platform moderation, no reporting system, just direct communication. The pattern felt intentional. Eventually I reached the scenic overlook. The area sat nearly empty. A few parked vehicles. Nothing unusual. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. Another location change. My stomach immediately dropped, because now she wanted to meet at an abandoned roadside pull-off several miles farther away. The realization genuinely frightened me, because there was absolutely no reason for a first date to happen there. None. I finally pushed back, asked why we kept changing locations. The response arrived almost immediately. Too quickly. The message read, "I just don't like being around people." The answer felt wrong. Very wrong. Because nobody who dislikes people suggests 4 separate public meeting places before settling on an isolated roadside location. The logic didn't make sense. At all. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I drove part of the way, then stopped at a gas station. Bright lights. Other people. Safer environment. I decided to call. For the first time, the number rang, then connected. My stomach immediately tightened, because the voice didn't match my expectations. Not because it sounded threatening, because it sounded rehearsed. Every answer felt delayed, carefully chosen, artificial. The realization genuinely unsettled me. Then something happened. While speaking, I heard another voice, very faint. In the background, my blood immediately ran cold, because it sounded like someone coaching her, whispering, giving instructions. The realization instantly changed everything. I ended the call. Immediately. The fear hit me harder than anything before, because now I no longer believed I was talking to one person. Not at all. Several minutes later, another message appeared. This one contained only a location pin. No explanation. No message. Just coordinates. The pin dropped in an area outside town surrounded by desert. No businesses. No residences. Nothing. The realization genuinely terrified me, because now there was no pretense of a date anymore. The situation had become something else entirely. I blocked the number. Immediately. Then drove home. The story should have ended there. It didn't. 3 days later, police contacted me. The call immediately made my stomach tighten, because investigators asked about that exact phone number. The exact number. The realization instantly changed everything. Apparently another individual reported a remarkably similar experience. Same dating profile. Same location changes. Same behavior. The pattern immediately caught investigators' attention, because multiple reports described nearly identical interactions. Promising conversations. Last-minute location changes. Increasingly isolated destinations. The realization genuinely disturbed everyone involved, because it suggested planning, not coincidence. The investigation expanded. Authorities eventually linked the profile to fraudulent activity involving multiple identities. Multiple photographs, multiple phone numbers, multiple victims. The exact motives were never fully explained. And honestly, I didn't ask. Some answers wouldn't make me feel any better. Still, one detail has haunted me ever since, because investigators later recovered deleted messages connected to the account. Messages never delivered to me. One draft message stood out immediately. A message apparently written shortly before I stopped driving toward the final location. The sentence still gives me chills. It read, "He's turning around." Those 3 words have stayed with me ever since, because they suggest something terrifying. Not that somebody was waiting for me, but that somebody was watching me. Watching closely enough to know exactly when I decided not to continue. And that realization still bothers me more than anything else. Because if they could see me turning around, then they were much closer than I ever realized. The message arrived at 11:43 p.m. At first, I almost ignored it. I was already lying in bed. The conversation had slowed down. I figured it was just another goodnight text. Instead, it was a photograph. A photograph that made my blood run cold instantly, because the picture showed my house. Not a photo from social media. Not an old real estate listing. Not a Google Street View image. A fresh photograph, taken at night, from across the street. And attached beneath it was a single sentence. "You should close the blinds." This happened in the fall of 2023. At the time, I was 29 years old and and living outside Raleigh, North Carolina. I'd been using dating apps on and off for years. Nothing serious. Mostly casual conversations. Mostly dead-end matches. Nothing unusual. Then I matched with someone named Lauren. At least that's the name she used. The profile seemed completely normal. Professional photos. Detailed bio. Local area. Everything checked out. Or so it seemed. The conversation started naturally. No red flags. No obvious signs of a fake account. No requests for money. No strange behavior. Nothing. For nearly 2 weeks, everything felt genuine. We messaged every day. Morning. Afternoon. Late at night. The connection felt surprisingly easy. The kind of conversation that makes you stop checking other matches. The kind that feels real. Eventually we exchanged phone numbers, then moved off the app. Normal progression. Nothing strange. At least initially. Looking back, there were warning signs. Small ones. Easy to dismiss. For example, she rarely answered direct questions. Not completely. Just enough to stay vague. Questions about work. Questions about family. Questions about friends. Every answer lacked specifics. The realization bothered me occasionally, but not enough to stop talking. Then another detail appeared. And this one felt stranger. She seemed to know things I never told her. Specific things. The coffee shop near my office. A bookstore I visited. A local running trail. My stomach tightened every time it happened, because none of that information appeared on my profile. None. Whenever I asked how she knew those places, she always gave the same explanation. She claimed she spent time nearby. Reasonable. Plausible. Difficult to challenge. Still, something felt off. Very off. Then came the photograph. 11:43 p.m. A normal evening conversation. Nothing unusual. Then my phone buzzed. One new image. I opened it and froze, because the picture showed my house. My actual house. Taken recently. The porch light was on. My vehicle sat in the driveway. The living room lights glowed through the front window. Everything appeared exactly as it looked at that moment. My blood immediately turned to ice. The realization hit me instantly. Somebody had taken the photograph that night. Very recently. Possibly minutes earlier. Then I read the message beneath it. You should close the blinds. My heart immediately started racing, because my blinds were open. At that exact moment, the realization genuinely terrified me. I rushed to the window, pulled the blinds shut, then looked outside. Nothing. No vehicles. No pedestrians. No obvious explanation. The street appeared empty. Completely empty. My hands were shaking. I immediately called the number. No answer. Called again. Straight to voicemail. The fear intensified, because now the situation felt real. Very real. Not an internet prank. Not a fake profile. Somebody physically knew where I lived. The realization genuinely terrified me. Then another message arrived. My blood immediately ran cold, because it read, "There. That's better." The sentence made me physically sick, because it meant whoever took the photo was still nearby. Still watching. Still observing the house. The realization instantly changed everything. I called police. Immediately. Officers arrived quickly. The area was searched. No suspects. No vehicles. Nothing. At least initially. Then investigators reviewed the photograph and discovered something disturbing. The image metadata had been stripped. No location. No timestamp. Nothing useful. The sender knew exactly how to avoid identification. The realization genuinely unsettled investigators, because this wasn't impulsive behavior. It looked planned. Very planned. The investigation expanded, and eventually officers discovered something even worse. The phone number wasn't real. Virtual number. Temporary account. Fake identity. Everything connected to the profile was fabricated. The realization made me physically sick, because I'd spent 2 weeks talking to someone who effectively didn't exist. At least not under that identity. The dating profile disappeared shortly afterward. Deleted. Gone. Vanished overnight. The story should have ended there. It didn't. Several weeks later, investigators contacted me again. Their tone immediately sounded different. More serious. Because they had identified additional victims. Multiple individuals. Several states. Same profile style. Same behavior. Long conversations. Personal information gathering. Then unexplained photographs. The pattern immediately stood out. Because whoever operated the accounts wasn't seeking relationships. They were seeking information, learning routines, learning schedules, learning vulnerabilities. The realization genuinely frightened me, because I kept thinking about how much information I'd shared. Work schedule, favorite places, weekend habits, small details. Details that seemed harmless individually, dangerous when combined. Then investigators showed me something that still haunts me. Recovered messages, deleted drafts, messages never actually sent. Most were meaningless. Random notes, observations. Then one sentence appeared. A sentence written several days before the photograph. The sentence still gives me chills. It read, "He leaves the light on when he's home alone." My blood immediately turned cold. Because the statement was accurate, perfectly accurate, and it meant whoever was behind the profile wasn't learning about me online. They'd been watching in person, long before I ever received that photograph, long before I ever felt suspicious, long before I realized something was wrong. And that's the detail that still bothers me most. Not the fake profile, not the messages, not even the photograph. The fact that somebody knew my habits well enough to document them, without me ever noticing.